This is Malini Srivastava. Welcome to the YouTube channel ALC Discussion Forum. So, our main objective of the discussion and the seminar today is to create a community awareness on various upcoming economic issues, encourage the lower class and the lower middle class for self employment, and to promote socioeconomic empowerment, educate and aware our healthcare and family care. So, first of all, I would like to ask everyone, how does we define home? The place we were born, where one works, or it is where one lives with the family? Our need is to become economic unit that earn income in made nomads, displacing us for our homes. Considering the children of well-heeled parents to go abroad to study, they find jobs and settle in foreign location and raise their family. They are proud achievers their parents or society brag about. Many middle class households crave for that possibility of dollar income earning offsprings. That is what a life of middle class is. Then considers those worker walking home with children on their back, belongings bundle off their head. They also move to big cities in search of a better life, better income. How is that? What we have nothing but pity and disdain for them? How are they different from the first lot? How cruel is the economic reality that our earnings in one place and our homes in another? We live a life torn between two. What we call our home is where we think we belong, a place that accepts us, supports us. We give warmth, up earning, and income. So, first of all, I would like to invite our three panelists in front of me. Our first panelist is Dr. Shalini Singh. She's a doctor, poet, blogger, mother, and MBA graduate. She served 10 years in Army Medical Corps. She has also done her MBA from the MDI Gurugram, a proprietor, Laksh Academy, director of Trust Toyota. Our second panelist is Mrs. Renu Bajpai, self-starter, social entrepreneur, mother of two. She's a management professional, motivational trainer, content developer of USD Group, based in New Delhi. Low economic strata providing them sustainable, dignified livelihood. Our third panelist is Miss Atisha Singh. She's an LLM from Nelsar University. Atisha is an advocate and influencer and an activist who has worked a lot in the field of women's law and labor law. So, welcome all three. How are you all? Great. Thank you so much. So, first of all, let's take everybody's point of view regarding the same. So, first of all, Dr. Shalini, what do you think? Can you give some point of view of yours on this current situation and the economic condition of every person, every society? Please, let's have some view from your side.
So, as this COVID-19 is rapidly spreading across the world, health services are majorly overwhelmed, and the global economy has taken a massive blow. If we talk about India, then IMF has really it has cut our India's growth forecast to 1.9% for 2020 and 21, and ILO has said that in India, 400 million people will be sinking deeper into poverty.
Mhm.
This pandemic has reinforced that there is a deep connection between environment, economy, and health. We can't separate them. They are
Mhm.
deeply intertwined. And this crisis has also demonstrated that government and individuals, they are capable of strong and rapid action when faced with a challenge. So, what you say कि now we need a sustainable economy and especially for the middle class. So, what is needed now is foremost, this is investment in infrastructure development. It is the most effective way to boost economic activity and create jobs. And previous experience has taught us that investment in cleaner measures, in green measures and public transport, they make more jobs than traditional economic measures. So India should also take this opportunity and help spread renewable energy, particularly in the field of solar panels and all, and electrification and things like that, transport, more public transport. Then storage facilities for grain, ensuring a supply chain,
Mhm.
which can ensure that farmers they do not lose on their produce. Then what is another thing which is most important is security net for vulnerable people. See, most of our job workers, 90% of them are informally employed and they are very vulnerable. They are vulnerable to this corona, they are vulnerable to any disaster. So they should have some security
Mhm.
net and they should have access to formal credit and social security net in the form of pensions, in the form of insurance, also access to clean water, clean surroundings, and healthcare, which makes them less vulnerable. Then this COVID has also changed the pattern of consumption. Most of people are working from home on more flexible schedule. Their non-essential purchases have been temporarily seized. We can take this opportunity to drive it long-term behavioral change.
Mhm.
That is also needed for a sustainable development. Then future may see more of jobs in gig economy and e-commerce. They can be encouraged, and some safety measures should also be ensured for consumer protection. Now, globalization is not going anywhere. Globalization has just entered a new version of it. COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the fore the need for self-sufficiency in some core health-related products and services. We may not match up to the manufacturing of China, economic giant, but we do need to bolster emergency reserves. India is certainly going to open to new configurations with friendly nations to try and reduce its dependence in key sectors. Businesses started working in models that promote local supply chain for essential services. Now, as you say, reverse migration of gigantic proportion is unfolding before our eyes. The challenge for central and state government is to create millions of new rural job opportunities. As suggested by Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam Azad, state and central government in tandem can gesture revival of rural economy through massive spending on agriculture, infrastructure, healthcare, and education. This can drive a next wave of economic growth in India. We can have smart economic rural hubs and also decongest the urban areas. Decongested urban areas will provide an opportunity to fast track the smart cities initiative. Focus on India-centric innovation to reduce external dependency while promoting economic growth in these troubled times. Now we come to the second objective of today's discussion, which you said empowering lower and middle class. See, by definition, what we say middle class is actually not the middle class. So-called middle class is between 78 and 98 percentile, which is actually upper class. Middle India is located in middle 60% of income spectrum. It is 164 million households, out of which 30% live in urban areas and less than 16% are graduates or postgraduates. So transforming this middle India into nation's genuine middle class will support the government's efforts to increase GDP to 8 to 10% range. As household income increases, it will increase opportunities for small businesses and startups. And maybe we can start a virtuous cycle. The need is for all this, need is for financial inclusion. Significant progress has been made by the government Pradhan Mantri Yojana, Jan Dhan Yojana scheme, which is believed to be a game changer. Besides bringing banking services to millions of households, it also helped government in eliminating the notoriously leaky system of delivering subsidy and welfare benefits by depositing payments directly to the recipients. In spite of this achievement, we see only 52.8% adult population has bank account. Many new open bank accounts, they are just inactive or they are just used to take government subsidy. 87% of middle India has a bank account, but only 12.7% has availed any loan of any kind. We need to design financial services and products According to user in mind, greater access to credit and saving options will go a long way in empowering them. Small and medium businesses, which account for vast employment, they can benefit from easier credits. Again, better infrastructure is closely linked to productivity. Efficient, affordable transportation, home make clean tap water in their homes, separate kitchen where they can work on LPGs, having toilet in the home. All of it provides better and healthier environment. Government has launched a number of ambitious growth acceleration policies initiatives like restrictions on foreign direct investments, easing of it, improving infrastructure, skill training on a massive scale. But question is whether they can be successfully implemented. Global economy itself remains weak, and India is now more closely related to global economy than it was say 20 years back. We need much stronger private sector investment. Banking sector needs to be revamped, revitalized because they are saddled with bad and low performing, non-performing loans. Creation of tens of millions of better paying jobs for low skilled workers. Increasing exports. In Asia, countries like Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they are all trying to step into China's shoes. So India has a huge competition. It has to really work hard. Now, more alarming is how technology is changing manufacturing. It is now becoming low labor intensive and more high tech and capital intensive. In India, we are seeing it at present because in IT sector attracts foreign investors because they believe in IT capability. If we see Ericsson, it employs 22,000 people in India, but only 1,000 they are in intensive labor production. Otherwise, all of them are highly employed in highly skilled work. So inclusive growth is required. Now today, more people are aware of crafts. They know that artisans need to be revived and then are ready to nurture them. As the demand for sustainable contemporary Indian fashion increase, we must ensure both the authenticity of the craft and empowerment of rural artisans. Women can be trained in this craft, which can go a long way in empowering family, community, and nature. The third objective was about the healthcare. So healthcare may spend on preventive care. It is must. It is not just government apathy that has made India so vulnerable to health shocks. Indian elites have also played a part in demanding greater funding for big hospitals providing tertiary care, rather than providing more investment in preventive public health care. Out of all the money spent in healthcare, only 7% is spent on preventive care. COVID-19 has changed all that. It has shown that health of each member of a society impacts that of the other. It has shown that without health, it is not possible to create wealth. That is what lockdown has shown us. It is now time to promote health for all. Besides preventive care, another important issue is health insurance. Families end up losing their life savings to save a loved one from death. According to National Health Profile 2018, around 43 crore individuals, that is 34% of Indian population, they have access to some kind of health insurance. Government's flagship health insurance, Ayushman Bharat, it served as a highly positive note in this direction by proposing to bring about 10 crore individuals under hospitalization cover of 5 lakhs. Still, it leaves larger Indian middle class bereft of any health insurance. A study by Public Health Foundation of India found out that 55 million Indians drove to poverty in 2017 because of out-of-pocket health expense. Out of these, 38 million became poor just because of expenditure on medicines. There is need to create more awareness through campaigns and through messages that need to explain the need of health insurance and then uncomplicate it for the common man. Also, they should include in its gambit OPD services and they should be affordable. Thank you.
Great. So anyway, we could see that the poor class, the lower class is anyway suffering. So आतिशा मजदूर तबका जिसे हम कहते हैं और वो सबसे ज्यादा सहन कर रहा है इस समय। हम न्यूज चैनल हमेशा एक रियलिटी चेक में ये शो होता है कि जो मजदूर तबका जो लेबर है वो हमेशा झेल रहा है। वो खाने में झेल रहा है, वो ट्रैवल करने में झेल रहा है. So what is your take on the legal aspect? So just give a brief background on how labor law is involved and how it affects the migrant laborers worldwide.
That we come so that we come up with a possible solution or with a possible opinion for that. So you will be shocked to know that the labor law was formed out of a pandemic. So during the 13th and the 14th century, the Europe was badly struck with the bubonic plague. It almost digested the 20 to 30 million population of the Europe, and almost 50% people in UK died of this pandemic. So world economy was badly struck. The GDP reached to its lowest number. When the nation decided to come up with their GDP, when the nation decided to work on their financial agendas, then there were scarcity of the laborers. And those who were ready to work, they demanded a hefty amount of wages for that. Obviously, we know how demand and supply work for that. So, so there was a need for a law in the place. So the then ruler of the UK, the King Edward III, he passed an ordinance, a royal ordinance on 18th June 1349, named as the Royal Ordinance of the Labour Law. So this decided the wages on the pre-plague level. So at least there was something to govern the labor laws. There was no exploitation of labor at that point of time. So I'm talking about 1349. So this was the first statute of the labor law. Now, thereafter, labor law undergo a lot of changes, but the very major change took after the Industrial Revolution. So we all know that the laborers were exploited to its most after the Industrial Revolution. So after that, Trade Union Act came into picture. And after that also, India faced a lot of changes in its labor law premise. And then a series of laws were formed till 1919. And after that, in 1919, International Labour Organization was formed, and India was the original party to it. And now India has signed 147 conventions of International Labour Organization. So thereafter, in 1918, we all know that Spanish flu was also in India. It also consumed half of the population of our country, and again the GDP was so low. So back in 1918, there was a famous strike. We all know that Ahmedabad textile mill strike. Gandhiji was the leading face of this strike, and because of him, labor law changed drastically. And now we all remember Gandhiji just for Swachh Bharat campaigns. But I'll tell you, at that point of time in 1918, Gandhiji fought for the right of the laborers, and he demanded 35% of pay hike for those workers who were working during the plague and who were working after the plague also. And I'll tell you a scenario. In 1918 only, the mill owners, they understood the labor rights, and they treated the laborers with the dignity that they allowed them 70 to 80% of bonus. They said that if you are working as, they actually recognized that the migrant laborers or the laborers, they are the backbone of any economy. So they were awarded 70 to 80% of the pay hike. I'm talking about 1918. And if I talk about the current policies, I am not aware of any policy in 2020 or any ordinance or any law in place which has raised the bonuses or even the pay hikes of the laborers or any other employee of this country. Instead of this, instead of raising anything, instead of making any particular law, the Karnataka government, under the influence of the builders in Karnataka, they stopped the migrant laborers from going to their places, because they thought that if they'll stay in Karnataka, in the coming time, they'll help in revival of the economy. Now, what I feel is that it is against the basic constitutional rights of the laborers. It is against the Article 21 of the Constitution, which says that every person living in this country has a right to life and equal opportunities. Over to you, Malini.
Perfect. Perfect. So thank you so much, Atisha, for giving this basic knowledge about it. I think we all are unaware of this basic thing. And जो ये पहली लाइन थी कि बना ही लेबर लॉ तब जब पैंडेमिक आया. So there only we understand that how, what level, where do we keep these labors in our society. So my next question to you, Dr. Shalini, is that presently India has 45 years high employment rate, and in the way more Indians might die of hunger and coronavirus, what measures do you think one should follow?
Measures have already spoken when I spoke. And I think,
If
yes,
you can just elaborate a bit.
pain of unemployment will be felt acutely for months and years, but there can be a quick rebound. In fact, creation of fresh jobs and revival of old ones may happen before we are anticipating, before we are expecting it. One reason is purely psychological. See, consumers liberated after being cooped up at home for months may go crazy once lockdown is lifted. They may want to buy more, they may want to spend more, they may want to travel more. It is irrational, it is stupid, but humans, they do get overboard. They tend to get overboard. Of course, this release of pent up demand will be restricted to those who retain their jobs, but it will go a long way in reviving the economy. Second, the World Bank has predicted that world economy would show negative growth of 3%, and India about 1.5 to 1.6%, but it may not be true because India is less dependent than, say, China or Japan on exports. India has a huge domestic demand, and so our rate may remain more or less static. However, there are many ifs and buts here. No one has seen the scenario before, and we don't know if recovery will be, they say, U-shaped, or it will be V-shaped, or it will be L-shaped. Unlike Great Depression in the last century, this crisis is a result of external shock. See, economies, they were more or such, they were in the normal range. Maybe they were not in the pink of the health, but they were just normal range. And this is something which has happened externally. How economies and how consumers and entrepreneurs, how they are going to react, it is still a matter of speculation. So we are now painting extreme scenarios. That may not happen. We say that there is no hope for travel. We say there is no hope for hospitality. Let's look at the hopeful side. So there are millions of people stranded. There are another million who want to be with their families because they couldn't during this. So there are people who are afraid to travel, but there are also people who they will just want to travel as if freed from prison. They are watching TLCs, travel network all throughout the day. They're just going, they're just crazy. And you see, China, it has opened the domestic tourism and people are going. So maybe sale of air tickets, they zoom. Maybe their prices also zoom. Hospitality may see the spike also. Farmers, they are sitting on a bumper rabi crop. Loss of laborers from Punjab and from Haryana, they have been gained for the farmers of UP and Bihar. And luckily for us, our agriculture backbone, that accounts for 14% of our GDP, it can recover quickly and even it can grow more next year. This COVID-19, it is not a geophysical disaster and it is not a war. And our physical infrastructure is intact. So, industries, they can quickly become operational with a new work climate, provided they get their labor force back and working capital to restart their business. What is most important for us is to get people safely back to work. And that will be possible if we can provide best possible healthcare to our citizens. To address this need, hospitals, they are investing in PPEs, in consumables, even though they are grappling with decline in OPDs. Civilization, they have endured several crises in our history and we have put that behind us. We shall overcome again. This too shall pass. Over to you, Malini.
Great. This too shall pass. I think this anxious within us is also, somewhere has lead to this positivity that this shall too pass. And but now somewhere we feel that just now the cases have been started. It's crossed 1 lakh. and a lot of delivery, Swiggy, if you take an example of Swiggy, Uber, have fired like approx 3,500 employees of their company. So it feels bad. Me as a corporate worker, and Atisha as an advocate, you as an worker, we feel that there is some insecurity within us, but still we hold this positivity and lead our life progressively, that something can be better. And thank you so much for coming into this panel, Dr. Shalini and Atisha, for discussing such beautifully. And I think it's so important to give these views to our viewers, to people down there. And we can always connect in future for the different topics as well. So thank you so much for the day. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Malini. Thank you for having us here.
All right. Bye, Atisha.
Uh,
Bye, ma'am.
yeah. Bye. Thank you.